Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ethics in Games. This is our third one. We started doing these in January, and we're seeing that lots of people are going back and looking at the recording. We hope you like them. We have with us, of course, Sherry Jones, and Sherry will be taking us through another game and ethical dilemma. So, Sherry, if you are ready to start, we're ready too.
Thank you, Kay. Okay, welcome again to Ethics and Game series. Today, for this third round, we are going to cover the game called Life is Strange. And in the title slide there, you can see that's actually Max Cauliekl, which is actually the main character of the game. So if we can please go next. Okay, so we're just going to dive right into what exactly is Life is Strange. So next. Okay, so it's a first-person episodic graphic adventure game. That's how Dontnod Entertainment calls its game. That's what they want to call it. And it is published by Square Enix, Feral Interactive, and Blackwing Foundation, and pretty much is released everywhere. So MS Windows, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and so forth. When I first played it, I was playing on PlayStation 3. Okay, so the older version of the game. But you can pretty much download it from Steam or play in any of the platforms you like. And actually, this game is actually an interactive fiction. They don't want to call it that because the term sounds foreign to a lot of people. But it is an interactive fiction. And it's the choices that you make in the game lead to certain consequences. And what's unique about this game, it's probably one of the best made interactive fiction games out there because the decisions that you make in a game have real impact, and the real impact actually lead to consequences that you can't reverse in certain scenarios. So please go next. Okay, so the story revolves around this 18-year-old girl named Max Cauliekl, and she's a photography student at Blackwell Academy. And the story is fixated in this fictional town in Arcadia Bay in Oregon. So Oregon's real, Arcadia Bay is not. So this is a fictional town. And the whole story revolves about all the conflicts and problems that happens in her life, as well as the conflict that she experienced when she's with friends and other people. But the biggest conflict that's above all the little conflict that we've experienced through the game is this impending storm, which she saw in a vision. So the first time she saw it, she was dreaming and she was asleep and she thought it was a dream sequence. But in this dream, she saw that there was a terrible storm that's heading toward Arcadia Bay and it's going to demolish everything in its path. Later on in the story, she develops this mysterious power to see the future and travel through time. We don't know exactly why she has this power, except that she miraculously obtained this power. So if we can go next.
Sounds a bit like Cassandra.
Yes. Okay, so this is the dream sequence. I just included this where she saw this vision in her dream of this gigantic tornado storm-like thing that's heading toward Arcadia Bay. And pretty much at the size of that tornado, everything will be pummeled. So please go next. Okay, so here are some disclaimers. The game themes are pretty mature because it is written about an 18-year-old's life. So the language, rhetorical speech patterns mimic young people's speech patterns. Not only that, the things that they experience, the events that they experience are also more mature due to their age. So some of the themes, and I didn't put everything there because it's just too many, but I'm just going to read off some of them, right? So coming of age, gun violence, drug abuse, abusive homes, wealthy versus poor, powerful versus weak, surveillance, yay, that big word came back again, subjectivity of truth, money and corruption, untrustworthy adults, untrustworthy authorities, rebellion against authorities, bullying, confronting sexual identity, same-sex relationships. Now, I really enjoyed this game because this is one of the very, very few games that started to address same-sex relationship as a norm, not as some kind of oddity or some kind of fascinating thing to look at, but it's a normal thing in this game, okay? Purity versus sex, religious dogmatism versus choice, sexual violence, rape, suicide, disability, activism, protest. And then the word highlighted is heroism, which is a word, a theme that constantly is hinted at the player as the player play to say, be brave and take action. Okay, so next. Okay, so here are some relevant theories that we can use to explain what's happening with the game design. So next. All right, so this is what influenced the game developers because they actually use some of the terms in the game. So first of all, chaos theory, which is actually from the mathematics field, okay? And it's a theory that undergirding chaotic complex system, any kind of system that seems chaotic, and chaotic in the term of it seems random, that's what they use the word chaotic to describe it, okay? There exists underlying patterns that can be calculated or computed based on determining the initial conditions, so the original data set of the complex system. So the idea is that if you can determine what the original data set was, you can actually figure out the trajectory of the development of the chaotic complex system. Now, butterfly effect is actually it's a metaphor that is related to the chaos theory, okay? And it's used in chaos theory to refer to changes in the nonlinear system. So notice the word nonlinear, and previously in the Metagame Book Club, we actually covered nonlinear narrative as one form of narrative design. So this word nonlinear came back again, okay? So it refers to changes in nonlinear system that can be attributed to small changes in the initial condition, initial data. So what are we talking about here? So the very layman idea is that small changes in the past can have a ricocheting effect toward the future events, even if we can't perceive what will happen next. So that's called the butterfly effect. Okay, and it's actually developed by a meteorologist to discuss weather patterns. And in his theory, he actually uses a tornado to explain how chaos theory and butterfly effect actually works. And you can actually see there was a tornado in actually the game.
Yeah. I was wondering where the tornado came from, other than the storm, but I see it has more than one meaning.
Right. Yeah, they try to incorporate as much as possible in their game. So please go next. Right. Now, this is from philosophy, and the developers have no reference to this, but I think it's relevant to our discussion today, which is the eternal recurrence theory. So I'm going to bring Friedrich Nietzsche's theory, eternal recurrence theory, into this discussion. No, he is not the first person to discuss this idea of eternal recurrence. And lots of religions and lots of philosophies, the idea of eternal return is discussed over and over and over again. But his version, Nietzsche's version of the eternal recurrence theory, has great philosophical meaning in terms of ethics, okay? So it's basically a philosophical doctrine, a belief, okay, that all events in the universe repeat occurrences ad infinitum. So ad infinitum means again and again in the same way forever. So it repeats forever. And this is a thought experiment based on the logic that if the amount of matter and energy in the universe are finite, okay, and that the combination of those matter and energy are finite, then it follows that events, which is a combination of matter and energy, right, actions, must recur ad infinitum, forever, again and again and again. So the relevance of this theory to the game will be discussed later in our presentation. I wanted to bring this up so that we don't get lost in the game itself. Okay, so please go next. All right, so other things we need to bring into this is moral dilemmas. So moral dilemma refers to a difficult situation when there are two cases where there are two outcomes. So depending on what you choose, there'll be two different outcomes. And the case that you choose might benefit one set of people, but might be a detriment to other set of people. So that's why it's called a moral dilemma. And usually a moral dilemma can be solved if we figure out what is your original ethical position. This is why we talk about ethics first and then morality later, because your morality is sort of determined by the ethical value that you espouse to, okay? So in this particular game, there are many, many, many sets of moral dilemmas that we can discuss later as we go through the game. Okay, so please go next. So I'm going to discuss a bit about the gameplay and game elements mechanics in this game. Next, please. All right. So Again, it is a first-person game, so you're playing through the eyes of Max Cauliekl. And it is predominantly point-and-click gameplay, so it's not too hard. So you can interact with environments and objects in the environment. Also, in addition, given that I hinted at this is an interactive fiction game, you are also interacting with narrative action choices. So depending on which narrative action you choose, it really leads to certain future events, parallel timelines, and so forth. And you as a player, as Max, really act like a detective where you're trying to solve the puzzle by interacting with as many objects and as many people as possible to figure out how to solve some of the problems. And then again, she also travels with time. So we will see how she is able to do that when I show you how the mechanics goes. Okay, so please go next. Okay, so here are some objects, for example. So in front of her, there's you can see in the cursor, there's the camera, and there's actually a mobile phone, there's photos and so forth. And you can see where it says, the control says YXAB, that's because it's a PlayStation control. So if you guys play PlayStation, that's actually the controls there. So please go next. Okay, so there's anything you can touch, basically, you can interact with. Now that camera is very interesting. When you take a photo with Max's camera, it saves as a time event, which means when she wants to jump through time, she can actually enter through the photo. That's what's very interesting about that camera. So next. Okay, so there's also a journal. So journal is when Max experiences an event and she's trying to document what happened to herself. So this is one way for the game developers to kind of remind you exactly what you have experienced, because the game takes many, many hours to play and it gets very complicated. So please go next. Here's an example of how beautiful that journal is. So this is actually an entry that Max wrote about herself. She's actually recording about herself. And it's a really smart way for the game developers to introduce the character to us through this journal entry. So next. Okay, now these are actually the location saver, which is actually in the journal. So when you go through different places in the Blackwell Academy or through different parts of the city, you can click on those locations to jump, time travel, space travel, using the journal. Next. All right. So these are the photos that she has placed out over her room. And later in the game, you can actually enter into those memory pieces through those photos. Next. Okay, so this this might seem inappropriate, but this I wanted to put the sticky note here because it shows you the politics in the school. Okay, there are some social tension arising in this school, and we know that kids are starting to make fun of each other, and you can see these kind of notes plastered everywhere in this school. So next. Also, we can use our mobile phone. So it's actually a phone within the game. So you can actually text your dad, text your friend Warren. You can actually receive messages through this thing. Next. Okay. These are posters on the wall. And I chose this poster to show everyone. There's lots and lots of posters throughout the school. But this particular one is a theme. It's a dominant theme in this game, which is, are you an everyday hero? Which is basically calling Max to action. In that, are you going to help somebody in need? Are you going to take on that role? Next. Okay. We can also see social media accounts. So this looks like a Facebook page. So if you access someone's computer, you can actually see what they're doing on the internet. Next. Okay. So this is someone's flash drive. So if you're lucky enough to steal someone's flash drive, you can see their secret files. That's unethical, but in the game, you can do it. Next. Okay, so we're going to talk about the narrative mechanics, how this works, okay? So please, next. So here are your actions. So it's limited usually by 2 or 3 actions. And this one just says, John Lennon said, I'm not avoiding, not sure if I have one. So you press B, Y, or X to select your choices. Next. Okay, so when you see the butterfly to the top left corner of the screen, that means the game says, if you see in there, it says, This icon means your action will have consequences. You can rewind to change the outcome. That means whatever you just did, okay, is leading to some consequence that you might not like. So this is that butterfly remind you of this. But when you see the butterfly, that also is a signal to say, if you didn't like what you have done, go back and rewind time and see if you want to change your options before the game keep on progressing. Okay, next. Okay, also, the button where it says LB on the top left, that means left button on the PlayStation, because PlayStation have 4 buttons, the control panel, and there's a bunch of buttons on the top. So PlayStation controller have special buttons there. If you're playing on PC, they will have different commands to give you, like probably WASD or something like that to help you rewind back in time. Next. Okay, so that little bubble dialogue, the dialogue bubble, okay, indicates that you learned some kind of fact. So let's say you made a decision that was really poor, but later on you learned the answer to change your decision. You can go back in time and cheat and say, oh, I know the answer. The answer is this. So that's what that little dialogue bubble is doing. Next. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the rhetoric portion. So this part, I'm going to enlist the help of Chris and Kay to help us. So I don't know who wants to go first, but this section is on game rhetoric. Authorities are untrustworthy and money corrupt authorities. So I guess, Chris, would you please take the reins?
Sure. About the following murder scene. When Max Cauliekl went to the female restroom after class, she accidentally became a witness to a murder. That's quite the school. Student Nathan Prescott came into the female restroom waving a gun and babbling to himself while Max stayed hidden from his view. Another student, Chloe Price, followed Nathan into the restroom. After a quarrel, Nathan shot Chloe to death. To prevent this murder, Max rewinded back in time prior to the murder to activate the fire alarm and scare Nathan to run away. Chloe lived. Now, Max is confronted by Principal Wells, who demands an answer.
So there's so just a setup really quick. So after she left the restroom, right, because she set out the fire alarm, now she's confronting Principal Wells. So there's 2 options, and I circled it to show you what I selected. So if you can read each thing and read my selection, that would be great.
Sure. So 2 options were to report Nathan or hide the truth, and we went, let's report Nathan. I just saw Nathan Prescott waving a gun around in the girls' room. Then he left. I ran out of here wondering what to do. Are you going to bust him? Mr. Prescott happens to be from the town's most distinguished family, and one of.
Okay, and that got cut off a little bit because it's too long. But please read the next one.
Sure. We'll continue this discussion later in my office.
Now, if you hide the truth, right? So the other option. Yep.
Okay, so you can also hide the truth. So the next option is, I just got sick in class. Female trouble. And you think that's the first time a student has used that line on me? You've only been here for 3 weeks and you're already causing conflict. This action will have consequences. So you have the butterfly, and we went with, no, he does not buy that at all. I may just have to flush my scholarship down the toilet. Yes, I could rewind and actually tell him the truth.
Okay, so in this scenario, I actually went back and rewinded and told him the truth because the other option sucked. He said I might lose my scholarship and get kicked out of school, so I decided, well, you know what? If I tell him, nothing happens anyway. So to give a little more context to that scene, what I cut off there was that Nathan Prescott's family is extremely wealthy, and they're one of the major donors to Blackwell Academy. And this is the principal who runs the academy. So basically, as long as the family has a lot of money and they contribute to the academy, the principal is not going to accept the strange accusation that Nathan Prescott could have brought a gun to school and shot at somebody, right? So this is why this is the hidden rhetoric that the adults are not really trustworthy, or specifically the authorities in this games are not trustworthy. So please go next. Okay. The next section, game rhetoric, be a hero. So who wants to take that on?
I can go ahead and take it on. Okay. So, Chris, I'd say once I'm done reading, just keep scrolling. Okay, the Everyday Heroes Photo Contest poster. Here's the poster for the contest. Mr. Jefferson really expects me to enter. Why? Now, all you need Now, all you need is the courage to share your gift with others. John Lennon once said that life is what happens while you're out busy making other plans.
So let me explain a little bit for okay.
Yes, please do. It's kind of random for me.
Yeah, I have to cut this. Otherwise, it would be 300 slides. So I have to cut some of it off. But basically, that conversation, he told Max, okay, this is what John Lennon said and so forth. And this conversation went long for a very long time until all of a sudden there's an option that said, okay, by the way, what did John Lennon say? Okay, so now you're trying to retrace your memory to go, what the heck did he say? So you have to choose one of these things. Now I chose, not sure if I have one. So if you can go next. And basically that she discovered that, oops, that's not a good answer because he didn't like that. So she asked herself, maybe I should rewind again and give him the right answer. So okay, go ahead with the next one.
Okay. And then she does it again.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So she chose the John Lennon said, which is, I chose it because I was cheating. I decided, you know what? That's not good. I found out the answer. I should go back and cheat. So this shows you how the game let you go back and forth through time to fix some of your problems. So next. Okay. So, okay, game rhetoric. Here's this next section. This section is a little bit longer. Okay, so either Carrie, Chris. So it's on surveillance, is the notion that surveillance is imprisonment. And also it's a call to action, which is be an activist to affect change. And this one is really, really relevant.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, because with the Metagame Book Club, we've been doing rapid responses. And what happened this weekend, I was like, we don't even have to do a rapid response. It's already taken care of for us.
Right.
Excuse me, Max. I know everyone loves being asked to sign a petition, but would you do and Ms. Grant a favor and hear me out? And you were nice. You said sure. And then, sure, I always have time for you. What's the petition? David Mattson, one of our chief of security, wants to put surveillance cameras all around the halls, classrooms, gym, dorm rooms, etc. Blackwell Academy should be a high school, not a high-security penitentiary. I get why schools should be on high alert these days, but cameras in the dorm rooms? It's a slippery slope, and it's up to you and your classmates to stand up here. Blackwell Academy has a noble heritage from the Native Americans who founded this land, the pioneers who shared it in peace, not fear and violence. And so, then I have three options. Blackwell is that old. The Native Americans, and you know a lot. So, you obviously picked Blackwell is that old. Blackwell is that old? That's incredible. You should learn a little history about your alma mater. You'll find some fascinating facts. There's lots of power in this region. I think it helps the creative juices flow around here. Now, before I sign your homework with this lecture, will you please sign the petition to keep our campus from going back to 1984? And you sign. And she says, absolutely, I don't mind security, but not pure surveillance. I knew you were my favorite new student at Blackwell for a good reason. Now, this action will have consequences.
Thank you, Kay. So every time you finish a narrative section, that butterfly comes back to scare you, so saying, if you let that sit, which is exactly the sequence that you have done, and you're not going to go back and change it, there will be consequences to your actions. And some of them are quite terrifying. So without giving this away, this one does changes her reputation around school because she signed that petition. And also she got into trouble with a particular person who wanted to install the surveillance cameras. So if we can please go next. Okay, so Chris, you ready for this one?
Sure.
This one is on specifically the rhetoric is, oops, if you can go back one, there we go. The powerful bully. So this idea that power punishes the weak, or powerful dominates the weak. This is a recurring theme in this game. And also, just because you are weak, you must be guilty. That's another theme that shows up a lot. So please go next. Go ahead.
All right. So don't think I'm blind. I see everything here at Blackwell. You understand what I'm saying? No, and leave me alone. You want to take a photo or intervene? Apparently, I want to intervene. Hey, why don't you leave her alone? Excuse me, this is official campus business. Excuse me, you shouldn't be yelling at students or bullying them. Hey, nobody's bullying anybody. I'm just doing my job. There's a little USB flash drive up on top.
That saves the points. Yes.
No, you're not. I'm waiting for an amp too. You're part of the problem, Missy. I'll remember this conversation. Oh, Max, that was great. I think you scared him for once. I'll have to go, but thank you. It means a lot. Anytime, Kate. This action will have consequences.
Okay, thank you.
Go to the main campus.
Yeah, so every single set, there's some consequence. And David Madsen is the security guy, the guy that wanted to install security cameras everywhere. We find out later, this game, 50 hours, some hours of play. And we find out later that David Madsen came back from the war. We don't know which exact war it is. And he came back pretty shell-shocked and very paranoid. And he decided to work as a security guard. And his thinking about the students and the school is that they're all criminals. So therefore, the way to control them is to set up security cameras everywhere, security cameras everywhere on this campus. And the reason why he was threatening Kate Marsh was that small girl that's standing there is because he thought that she was associated with this club called the Vortex Club. So the Vortex Club is where the wealthiest kids in school join together. It's where the privileged and the powerful get to party together. And what I didn't quite say at the very beginning of our presentation is that Blackwell Academy is a private institution for the wealthy. And the reason why our hero, Max Cauliekl, can attend it is because she won full scholarship to come to this school. So she's very smart. That's why she's able to come here. So please go next. Okay, so this section, game rhetoric, privilege can enable abuse, and understanding begets forgiveness. So, Kay, would you like to take this on?
Sure. Go ahead. Of course, Victoria has to have the bestest, newest, and most expensive. Now, you're totally stuck in the retro zone. Sad face. Every time I look at Victoria, I feel like she's talking smack about me.
So that little slide there, really quick, is just to show you how Max perceived Victoria. So Victoria is a student who's part of that, the Vortex Club and one of the privileged students. And Victoria is known to be extremely mean to everybody. But does our hero have to respond the same way as Victoria to everybody else? Well, obviously, it depends on how I play the game. So I'm just showing you how I play the game in this next section. So please go next.
Okay. Hey, Victoria. What do you want, Max? Make fun of or comfort? Which will she pick? And I'm sorry, that's an awesome cashmere coat. It was, but there will be another.
So you must have chose to comfort her.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Well, you always seem to know how to pick out the right outfits. I do have some talent. Mr. Jefferson told me. I've seen your pictures. You have a great eye. Richard Avedon Skinesk. I don't know who that is, sorry. He's one of my heroes. Thanks, Max.
Okay. So, yes, I could have decided to be mean, make fun of her. This is actually my other option. But it wouldn't be a good thing because what we learned from this little section is that if I comfort Victoria, and you see that white stuff that's on her was because a paint bucket fell down and splattered all over her, right? So Max had an opportunity to just completely make fun of her because that's what Victoria does to everybody else. But if you decide to be nice to Victoria, she ends up helping you at certain parts of the game. So we learned that it's good actually to be nice to other people. So next.
Who would have guessed that?
Yeah, right? Okay. This little section is quite extensive. I don't know, Chris, are you ready to take this on? This one is really big. This was on, it repeats the theme. Authorities are untrustworthy. So again, we have suspicion of authorities. And also, again, it says the weak are presumed guilty. And in this scenario, rape victims are automatically presumed guilty. And again, these themes are really relevant to our current conversation. Even though this game came out in 2015, I think we can agree that this kind of conversation is coming up all over the place right now.
Sure, though the views expressed in this film are not necessarily my views.
Yeah.
This is it's way too emo in here. Kate, isn't that gloomy until lately? Kate's room is usually immaculate. For her, this must be a pigsty. You have an image of a photo. I almost forgot what Kate looked like when she smiles. Poor Kate, she doesn't look good. Max, why did you step in between David and me yesterday? I hate bullies, or I had no choice, so I hate bullies. I hate bullies. David Madsen should know better. I was hoping he would, but it's nice to see that you care about me. Kate, I actually do care, so what's the story with you and David? He's a total paranoid ass, and I think he thinks I'm part of the Vortex Club. Yeah, right. Then you have options. Did you party with them? What about the video? Why? So we chose why. Why does he think that? Because he saw the video. You know how humiliating this is for me? I know this sucks, Kate, but tell me about the video and maybe I can help. Basically, I went to one Vortex party and ended up making out with a bunch of people, and I have no memory of it. Why would you go? Doesn't sound like you. That's awful. And we went with, that doesn't sound like you. Doesn't sound like you. I can't see you partying with Victoria. You have to tell me more than that. What happened at the party? Did you drink? I swear to God, I had one sip of red wine, and then I drank water. And then it was, are you sure? Not enough to get wasted. Not enough to get wasted, is it? I don't get wasted ever. I take a sip at church and I don't end up on a viral video, okay? Did somebody drug you? I remember getting sick and dizzy. Then Nathan Prescott said he would take me to the hospital. And then options are, did you go? Nathan Prescott? And how sick were you? You went, how sick were you? Sick enough to need a doctor. I thought I was dying, Max. So Nathan didn't take you to the ER. All I recall is driving for a long time, and then I woke up in a room. I thought it was a hospital because it was so white and bright. Go on, I'm listening. Somebody was talking to me in a soft voice. I thought it was a doctor. Until I heard Nathan and felt a sharp sting in my neck. And are you sure? That's all I remember. I don't know what happened. I woke up outside my dorm room the next day. I didn't have any marks or bruises, but I felt gross. So who took the video of you at the party? I have no idea. Probably Victoria. She was there being her mean self. How did I get a viral video taken down? I know it's already spreading. What if my church sees that? I need to know what to do. Kate, we'll figure it out. I'll check back later, okay? Thanks, Max. You can put my book here near my bag. And we found a letter. And there's something that says, Dear Katie, no spirit or
Devil
prepared me for what you have done in that videotape. And like a Jezebel, you released your harlot image before God's eye. I will pray for you. I will pray with my church for your soul to be saved from eternal hellfire. Love, Auntie Marsh. So the picture of Jesus is a rabbit. Hey, I'm trying to use my powers for good. I had no idea that Katie ever hung out with Alyssa and Stella. You're looking around. There's postcards. There's other things to look around. There's a trash can. That's a lot of tears. She's going through boxes. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness comprehends it not. Katie, you'll always be my brightest light against the dark. Hugs and love, Pop. Katie really has a doting father. Katie's art is perfect for a children's book. Everything looks so fun and colorful. And why is she covered the mirror? She can't look at herself. So, Max, can I ask you a question, and please be honest? Absolutely, Kate, anything. I need to find out if Nathan Prescott helped me or hurt me after that party. Should I go to the police? So we need to go to the police or look for proof. If you do that, they won't believe you. You're on the video grabbing at all those guys, and they'll use that against you bad. But I know I was drugged. That's what you have to prove, not them. I'm just telling you how the cops in school will look at this. The video doesn't exactly back you up. You make me feel so hopeless. No, Kate, I just don't want you to get hurt anymore. That seems impossible at this point, so that's your answer? I think we should wait. There are other things going on that might help you. But not right now, so I can walk down the halls with people calling me a viral slut. Thanks, Max. Good job, Dr. Max. She didn't like what I had to say, but we need more proof of what happened.
Okay, so I can go back one slide before we get to this little section. Yeah, so I had to, this was a big narrative arc, and the decision to end here because, and one thing about Life is Strange is that there are actually 5 episodes in the first Life is Strange. The Life is Strange Before the Storm just came out a few days ago, which this is not, our discussion is not about that. It's the prequel to this particular game, which we can examine the relationship between the characters before Max came to Blackwell Academy. That's what the Before the Storm is about. This particular game, there's actually 5 episodes, and one of the big arc is this arc, which is about Max's friend Kate Marsh. And we know that there was a videotape, which I didn't contextualize first, is that in this school, there was a videotape circulating around, and this is why there was a note that called her, you know, hey, thanks for the porn, because they're making fun of her. Apparently, she was drugged, and she was raped, and in the film, they filmed the process. She was completely knocked out. She had no memory of it, and this videotape is circulating everywhere, and now her aunt knows of it, and at this point, her church members do not know about it yet, but she's trying to ask Max for advice on how to deal with that. So you can see that this game is not just a feel-good, you know, teenage story, but actually deal with real social problems that's confronting teens in different parts of life. Yeah. So, so for, let's say if you're in if you're a teacher and you're in K-12, you might want to take caution about assigning this game for children, you know, for younger children. Maybe in your juniors and senior years, they can handle it, but anyone younger than that, you might have to give more context to help them get through some of the details, because it gets darker and darker from here, okay? So we can go next. Okay, so we're gonna go straight into the philosophy section. So thank you, Chris and Kay, for going through the narrative. I know there was lots of slides, but I think we did a really good job kind of pacing through all that. So I'm going to discuss the eternal recurrence theory in greater detail and explain how it is relevant to this game, Life is Strange. So please go next. Okay, so we kind of discussed this earlier, but I just want to remind everyone one more time that I introduced this eternal recurrence theory from Friedrich Nietzsche, okay? And again, it's this idea that all events recur ad infinitum. It's just a thought experiment. We're not saying that, yes, this is absolutely true, but if all matter and energy repeats itself, and the combination of those matter and energy repeats itself, then it follows logically that all events will recur ad infinitum forever. So there are, for example, other religions, in Hinduism, Buddhism, there's the karmic wheel, karma, reliving, rebirth. These are ideas that are present in religions already throughout the world. But what Nietzsche was trying to do when he took this theory into through a philosophical lens was to say, well, if events really do occur forever, what does that mean about ethics? What do we do with that? Okay, so please go next. Okay, so this I grab a quote directly from Nietzsche's book, the book, The Gay Science, and it's book 4 of The Gay Science. So this is a very great work by Nietzsche. Okay, so I'm going to read this off for everybody. So he says, "This life, as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live it once more and innumerable times more, and there will be nothing new in it, but every pain and every joy and every thought, sigh, and everything unutterably small or great in your life will have to return to you, all in the same succession and sequence. Even the spider in this moonlight between the trees, and even this moment and I myself, the eternal hourglass of existence is turned upside down again and again, and you with it, speck of dust. Would you not throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? Or have you once experienced a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, 'You are a god, and never had I heard anything more divine'? If this thought gained possession of you, it would change you as you are, or perhaps crush you. The question in each and everything, do you desire this once more and innumerable times more, would lie upon your actions as the greatest weight. Or how well disposed would you have to become to yourself and to life to crave nothing more fervently than this ultimate eternal confirmation and seal? This is actually a horrifying look at this possibility that in religion is actually a good thing for eternal return. This idea that there's a karmic wheel, this idea that we can reborn again. So this life is horrible. We can reborn and live another life. But in Nietzsche's version, when he think about it philosophically, this is absolutely terrifying. The idea that every problem, let's say if some of us, I can volunteer myself, have gotten into car accidents, and they're horrifying car accidents. And the idea that I had to relive that moment over and over and over and over and over again forever is absolutely terrifying, because I do not want to revisit that. But in this universe where everything recurs, including our life, which is actually energy and matter, and we relive that again and again, wouldn't that makes everything questionable? Wouldn't that make life unbearable? This is what the first time that Nietzsche sort of mentioned this idea of the eternal recurrence in his book, The Gay Science. Later on, he explained. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, actually, in pop culture right now, this series, The Magicians, deals with this. They have a time loop that I think that they're counting up to, like, that people have gone through the same thing for 40 times. And there's one person who can remember it, and he can only remember it when he's going through it. He can't do anything to change it. All he can do is that at some point, going through the loop once again, he can remember that he's gone through the loop before.
Right. Yes. So yeah, thank you. And this is an idea that it's probably heavily influenced by Nietzsche, because the other religious implications that you can actually change things and there'll be different outcome. But Nietzsche's philosophy was the one that brought that into the fold and said, well, what if everything repeats itself forever? Because Nietzsche was trying to bring theories from physics into philosophical discussion. This is why he was talking about matter and energy. And this is why there's a book collection called The Gay Science, talking about how science works and how physics works. But thank you for bringing that, because I think in philosophy, lots of philosophies theories, like for example, from the 19th century, 18th century, 17th century, has been reinterpreted over and over again in pop culture. But what we're trying to do, at least in this series, is to bring back to the origin of where some of those theories come from. So I can see that this idea certainly is showing up in pop culture everywhere. And it's still scary no matter what version I'm saying it. I think it's very scary. So next. Okay, so I just want to reiterate what this means, okay, besides telling you that it's scary. So the concept of eternal recurrence weighs heavily on one sense of ethics, okay? Ethics means a set of rules, right, to judge or to organize society, to make sure that society follows this set of rules for society to uphold itself, okay? So since all events recur forever, this means that such acts such as crime, punishment, revenge would also recur forever as well. So we can't escape those events. So does this mean that pain and suffering will also recur ad infinitum, right? Because if those things happen, crime, punishment, revenge, we can't avoid it. Also, in tandem is pain and suffering. So in the religious context, it seems to be a good thing to relive. But in a philosophical lens, we say that's terrifying because I don't think you can avoid everything else that comes with those recurring patterns. So the last note I put there is, what does punishment mean then? So for example, we have jail sentence, we lock people up, there's this capital punishment and so forth. What does punishment mean then in a universe where all events recur forever? Do we learn anything through punishment at all, or achieve justice through punishment? In fact, what does the word justice mean in this universe? Is there such thing called justice in this universe when events and pain and suffering repeat forever, regardless of punishment? So the idea of punishment, which I haven't gone too deep there because there'll be another quote to deepen this discussion, is that punishment is also an anger against time, because time records all events permanently. So if you want to punish, it's as if you're trying to go back into time and correct something. But in actuality, we really can't, right? This is not really possible. It's mentally, we think that it's somehow right something that was in the past. And we know as human beings, we can't go back in the past and correct something. So please go next. Okay, so here is from scholar Lester H. Hunt, who added an additional interpretation of Nietzsche's eternal recurrence theory. So this is what he said there. He said, as Nietzsche describes it, revenge is essentially an attitude toward time itself. It is the will's ill will against time, and it's what it was. It was. Okay. It is the result of the fact that, from a certain perspective, the past appears both to need changing and to be impossible to change, so that the will is left painfully powerless. So what does will even mean when we have no power to do anything with our will? An angry spectator of all that is past, among the effects of this painful condition is a desire to cause additional pain, either to oneself or to others. On all who can suffer, the will wreaks revenge for his inability to go backwards. Revenge is responsible for the ideal of equality, okay? The urge to punish and the excessive desire to be just. Among the other works of revenge are a nihilistic hatred for the fact that the world is characterized by flux and a longing to escape from this world. So with this particular eternal recurrence theory, we even start questioning the original Greek version of what we mean by equality and justice, because what does that even mean if punishment means nothing? Punishment affects nothing. So how is this a virtue ethics? Because virtue ethics means the idea that you're supposed to do good. Part of doing good is doing good for others as part of your ethical code. So in order for us to not recur suffering, okay, and this is something that the Buddhists have been saying for a very long time, that maybe we should live our life in a righteous way. So even if it repeats itself over and over again, we're not going to suffer the same crime or the same guilt that we have suffered in previous life if it's going to recur over and over again. So this is why eternal recurrence theory have often been tied to a background to virtue ethics. So next. Okay, so I wanted to also tie in the moral dilemmas that I discussed earlier to Life is Strange. And since we're not going to take a million photos, I just wanted to show you 3 different scenarios in a narrative form to explain to you what happened in the story, okay? So I didn't want to reveal the entirety of the story, but here's moral dilemma 1, okay? So later on in this story, Kate Marsh attempts to commit suicide by jumping off the top of the building of Blackwell Academy, because no one believed her when she said that she was not the one who engaged in the sexual activity, that she was raped and she was drugged. So no one believed her. So she decided she was going to jump off the building. And several decisions that Max made contributed to Kate's decision to commit suicide. So even though Max wants to save her, every time she makes a decision, if she doesn't make it in the exact sequence that's necessary, Kate will kill herself. It was Very, very difficult to get through that level. So to reverse Kate's suicide, Max had to travel back in time several times to change the outcome. And each decision Max made caused some harm to other people for the sake of saving Kate Marsh. So this is a moral dilemma, which is to save her, we have to cause harm to other people. And you'll find out about that when you play the game. There's lots of harm that's coming in Kate's way. Okay, so please go next. Okay, here's another moral dilemma in the game. So moral dilemma number 2. Each time Max traveled back in time, she suffers physical damage. And because the way she suffers physical damage is that she started to have nosebleeds. So at the beginning, she wasn't displaying the symptom, but her face started to look gaunt and she doesn't know why. Okay. Later on, as she did the time jump, like the 10th or the 12th or 13th time, she started to get nosebleeds. And I'm guessing that's possibly brain damage by going through time all the time. Okay. And Max attempts to save as many people as possible, but is forced to face certain unsatisfactory outcome. Furthermore, she is damaging herself in the process. So in this sense, I would argue that Max is not being moral by putting herself in jeopardy. If one of your moral code, our moral code, is to protect oneself as one of the moral code we must abide by. So same thing with the AI artificial intelligence development, is that you put in a code that you must protect yourself, okay, before you tech other bots. But the other code to supersede that, like Isaac Asimov been talking about, in other stories, the idea that the robot must protect human before it protect itself. But in the human world, one of the code that we probably should abide by is the idea that we should protect ourselves. And the fact that she is trying to save everybody else and she's causing herself brain damage, in this sense, she's not being moral. Okay, so that's a moral dilemma. Next. So here's moral dilemma number 3. So when Max attempts to save the life of Rachel Amber, which we did not have the chance to go through her arc because her arc is absolutely massive and I didn't want to take up more time today. So Rachel Amber is a character who disappeared due to the actions of David Madsen, Max's photography teacher. So that nice man at the beginning who said, hey, Max, you need to enter the photo competition. Apparently he works for the Prescotts, who are the rich and powerful people who controls everybody. And apparently he's the butcher. He actually is a murderer himself. So that was a problem, okay? So Mac discovers that her best friend, Chloe Price, becomes disabled in the future timeline. So this goes all the way back to the butterfly effect. Just because you save one person does not mean you can see the impending future for another person. They do not seem to be related at all, but for some reason, when Max decides to save the life of Rachel Amber, her friend Chloe Price get into a car accident and she was completely disabled from the neck down. She was not able to move. She was a quadriplegic at that point. Okay. So if Max wishes to save Chloe from a fate of lifetime disability, Max must decide whether or not to save Amber's life. This is a situation where one person's life is being weighed against another person's life. Is it ethical for Max to play favoritism by saving her friend Chloe instead? So in this situation, you have to make a decision. But in our storyline, Max did decide to save Chloe, because if you don't save Chloe, there's not going to be episode 4 or 5, because there are 5 episodes in this game. So we could argue that Max is being extremely immoral because she decided to save her friend over another person's life who is just as equally valuable, except the difference is Chloe is her friend and Rachel Amber is somebody else that she is not as familiar with. So that's another moral dilemma. So next. Okay. So I leave us with 2 questions and that's it. Okay. So today's is quick and painless today. So first question, does it matter that Max can travel back in time to stop certain crimes from happening if other forms of suffering arose out of her actions? So remember, this game, one of the dominant themes is be a hero, be heroic, be active, be an activist, change the future. Okay. Please go back. Sorry. Yeah. So that's one of the heroism, right? One of the heroism that's being discussed here. But my question is, does it really matter when she does this? Because other people suffer or other events or problem like that arose out of her actions. The other question we have is, if Max's world operates on parallel universes, and I say this because in her world, time travel is possible, and also multiple parallel time events seem to coexist, which means this has to be true, because if I made an error, I can go back in time and select another route. That would also mean this is a paradox. That means all the timelines are already been predetermined. Because if they're not predetermined, I would not be able to easily jump from one route to another route at the same time and repeatedly. That wouldn't make any sense. So this would mean that this world probably operates on parallel universes. Then would it matter that Max saves everyone in one narrative timeline when the same events of crime, pain, and suffering will recur ad infinitum in other narrative timelines? So say that she saved her friend in one timeline and they're all happy and everyone lives. But what if another timeline, she and her friend repeats her life and the same events happen to them over and over? So does it matter? Does it really matter? Is it ethical for her to save her friend's life and the town's life in one single timeline when the same thing happened in other timelines? So that's it. That's my question for everybody. So yes.
Oh my God, it's huge. It's totally huge. It's like, okay, you can save people on this timeline, but those other timelines still exist, and people are suffering there. How are you going to win? I'm sorry. I mean, this totally plays in with the ISTE playground where we're doing multiverses and different timelines. But man, I mean, this is a really non-science fiction way of thinking about this, and I could see this valuable in so many different types of courses.
Right. Except for we said it, and I did put the caution earlier, is that it does have some swear words, the adult language, adult themes in the game, but it's deeper. Naturally, the game does not address any philosophy. So what I'm doing is using philosophical theories to address what's happening in the game. So yes, there's many applications of this game in other disciplines. And
we do have a viewer who says it's the sci-fi version of the trolley problem.
Yes. A trolley problem is a moral dilemma problem. It's one example of many that we use to torture students, because like what Kay said, you can't really win, right? Moral dilemmas, that's what they are. They're moral dilemmas. Well, I can say it this way. You can win in the sense that if you figure out what your original ethical position is and you stick by that ethical position and you decide your decision, one case over the other, based on your original ethical position, then therefore you can say, well, I'm ethical. So that will work in that sense. So it's actually moral dilemmas. There's no winning in terms of, I can save everybody. That in terms of what I think what Kay means is everybody lives, in that kind of moral dilemma situation. But it also is when we do these kind of tests for students, which is very, very painful, is to test if the student's ethical position is consistent, which is the way they make their decision. Is it consistent to the original ethical position? So one of the codes, for example, if you say, the number one thing you have to do is to protect your life. That's the number one moral code you have to stick to. But yet you're doing things that's against your own life, which is, for example, you're jumping off airplanes, you're doing dangerous activities. Someone could say, well, you're not being ethical because your original ethical code is to protect yourself and protect your life. And everything you're doing is endangering yourself. See, so that's how we assess whether or not the student is logically and ethically consistent based on their original value set. This is why when we teach morality and ethics, it's not just, is that moral or immoral? That makes no sense whatsoever. We have to first ask, what is the ethical code that the student, the person adhere to? Yes.
Okay. I want to play the game and I don't want to play the game, okay? Thank you very much.
Well, it's great, okay? There's 5 parts to the first one, and then the next one is that good. It's so good as an interactive fiction that the second one, the Before the Storm came out, and I'm totally gonna play. I just had no time because it came out like 3 days ago, so I'm totally gonna play it. But this game though, it allows you, their consequences really, really matter. A lot of interactive fiction, you can just screw around and kind of figure out the outcome. But this game, there's so many possibilities that I thoroughly enjoy the writing. And also the developers are really smart to give you little pieces of the narrative by letting you engage with objects, looking at journals, looking at camera, the cameras and the phone and so forth to help us deeply understand how the characters think. So they really mimic how real people think, this is why I really enjoy this game. And that's it.
That is fantastic. So we have to thank you for our third webinar when it comes to ethics in games. And I have to say, each game is kind of building on the other one. You know, what we learned from Fallout Shelter, I think we took it to the Talos principle, and then we're here, and we're back to another dilemma.
Yay!
Okay, thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Next
Bye.
Bye.